Okay, we're going to get started here in just a second. Let me spread the thread here and get that posted. Oot, oot. Doo-doo. Okay. So we're live, it looks like. Excellent. Hey, Brandon, how's it going? We're going to get started here in just a bit. Wait for a few more people coming in. Okay, we got a couple more people. I was just waiting for 5 o'clock to come up here, but we'll get rolling here pretty soon. As soon as we get a few more people in. Just got the thread posted on Twitter, or the post on Twitter there. And we'll talk about Sears Point. Definitely a lot to cover here, so I'm going to try to get as much of that in here as possible. It can be a very different show from this in the past. Of course, we've had the shows where we've been waiting out the disqualification clock. This time, of course, you don't have that constraint, so we're going to do something a little different and just kind of review everything that happened through there and go over that. I'm going to just kind of pull up some information I have on here to kind of follow things along here. Hope you enjoyed the coverage from over the weekend there. Certainly enjoyed bringing it to you guys, and we're going to have some more information on our plans going forward after Sears Point here. So we'll get into all of that as soon as we get going here. Let's see. Let's get the pictures. And not that folder. Let's get the other folder. How about that? Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. We just got a couple people in here already, but I'm sure they'll catch up. First of all, again, just for anybody just jumped in here, again, big thanks to everyone for following the website and following our Twitter traffic this weekend. We had definitely no shortage of things to talk about at the Sonoma Raceway over the weekend. Again, our first race actually doing trackside coverage for LASTCAR.info, and definitely could be planning to do some more this year, and we'll cover that as well. First of all, gosh, I mean, where even to start? So much to talk about. I guess we'll just kind of go chronologically and just hit the main points. Really good week of activities. The folks at the Sonoma Raceway, they always do a great job bringing things out for the media to really get the full experience of the racetrack there, and really understanding the history of the track. And that was really significant this year, of course, with the return of the 2.5 mile version of the road course that hadn't been run in the Cup Series at least since 1997. And understanding that really not any driver in the field had any experience running that course before, at least in a Cup Series car, except I believe Josh Balicki mentioned he ran an old Brentwood Iron car on that course there, and a different deal there. But really, the week began back on last Monday. They had a media event over at the track with Michael Waltrip, as well as K&N Pro Series West driver Dave Smith, taking members around the track there for a lap. I was very fortunate to actually get 2 laps around there with Dave Smith there. Michael, everybody wanted to ride with him. He was out there in a Supra and this bright red car there. And there were so many people that were in line with him there. I think that it got to the point there where he was getting wore out. So I'm like, well, let me jump in with this other guy here. And as it usually seems to serve in covering, kind of the back of the field, that turned out to be a really good decision because I got to know him more through the weekend and following him running the number 35 car in Saturday's race. And we ended up doing a feature on him that's on the website. I believe we posted that back on Saturday before the K&N West race. Great guy. One of the instructors over at the racing school there has been working at that school for very many years. We got to follow him through the weekend. and driving for Dusty Baker, no less than the manager, former manager of the San Francisco Giants. Kind of a whole Bay Area effort with Smith living near the track. And he was fortunate. I was fortunate enough there to ride with him there. Got some video, which ended up getting put into the starting grid video at the end of this week. I was originally just going to do the video itself with the Darrell Waltrip intro, but then once we had that opportunity, I was like, well, heck, if I can keep the camera steady enough, if the footage is at all usable, I'm going to try to put that in there and do an old ESPN lap around thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was certainly fun putting that together. Yeah, one thing really noticeable in that in going around the track there is just how rough the curbs feel when the cars are running over all those curves going around. I think maybe it's just a matter of riding in a passenger car. We were just in a Toyota Camry, one of the newer models there, and you could feel just the rumble through the car there as you're going over those. They're not smooth at all. So when you hit those, I can't imagine what happens in the Cup Series cars and everything like that. But that was an interesting experience there. And then that really led ahead to pretty much the track activities on Friday. Jumping right into that, the other thing I'm really pleased with that they did at the track, and I mentioned this before, was the viewing area between turns 1 and 2 and the carousel itself in turn 6. Because the track is kind of crimped together, it created this little peninsula that was in the past just a family area. And I think before that, it was just like a spotter stand, the area around this tall video leaderboard that they created just a few years ago. By having that out there, it created this just fantastic view out there of the track, and that was really interesting to see, because you could actually, and somebody posted a video that was really good about this, where you could stand on one side of it, and they had this railing with these counters and everything. You could see the cars coming up the hill, and you could see them come up, and you would have enough time to walk across the width of that to get to the turn 6 portion in plenty of time to get set up there and watch the cars come back down the hill. Have to say, the first thing that came into my mind in watching the cars go through that corner, even compared to watching videos of the older races, it seemed like it was really tricky for people to get through that corner very quickly. I didn't really expect that. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a faster turn. I mean, maybe the experience of going to Watkins Glen was kind of coloring that, because the Glen, you have, even with the chicane, you have a similar kind of turn where you got to go downhill and you got to get on the brakes and get through that corner there. But at Sears Point, you don't have nearly as much time to actually get up any kind of decent speed. The chicane on the backstretch of Watkins Glen is almost a formality. People are winding through that to the degree that they're almost going through it straight. It may not seem like it on TV, but it's a really generous portion there. At Sears Point, when you get off of turn 4 and go downhill, then you're going back uphill at a much shorter straight. You're going in there much more slowly there, and everybody gets kind of sorted out. I was surprised to see a little bit of two wide racing through there, at least at the start of the race. The restarts made it interesting, but yeah, that was kind of the first thoughts on that. But really nice weather too. We had, I mean, I know that I just did a feature on the website there talking about issues with heat in general, but yeah, the weather was much better this time around, I would say. I mean, it's certainly been much hotter up there. For those of you who haven't been, we've had some races up there where the sun will just sit on you and it just gets insane out there. But it did get warmer through the weekend, which ended up becoming more of a story on Sunday, and we'll certainly get into that as well. Let me see. So just going through that first part of the weekend, again, getting doing the laps around the track there. All through the weekend, of course, we had a lot of people submitting entries into the JD McDuffie book contest that we had. So really appreciate that for all the support you guys did on that. We actually got, I think at the end, about 150 entries. Like, it was quite a lot. And it got to the point where people were making the same picks. And unlike the Talladega one, I was trying to make sure that people had a chance to repick again, because that was an issue at the Talladega one last year. But ultimately, I just sent out the book and the diecast just this afternoon. So congratulations to the person that won that. But it turned out to be very competitive with the way that race went, and we'll get into that as well. Kyle Weatherman coming in to drive for Ross Chastain. I didn't get a chance to actually speak with him during the weekend. I wasn't even aware that he was in the car at that point until later in the day on Friday. It didn't really get publicized that much at the track. But it makes sense, of course, because he got the practice and qualifying over in Gateway. It was starting to make me question if Chastain was going to be able to make it back over here. And then, of course, that ended up becoming an even bigger story out there through the weekend. I was also interested in the Rick Ware cars there in lead up to the race as well. I know the preliminary entry list showed that Steakhouse Elite was going to be one of the major sponsors for the 51 car with J.J. Yaley. And Yaley ended up being, of course, our last place feature after they had the fuel pump issues there on the 51 car. It ended up just being the Jacob Company's car. He was running just the plain blue car the entire weekend there. So different sponsorship arrangement with the team. Be interested to see what they do going forward. Yaley indicated that he's going to be running with the team this coming week at Chicagoland and then next week at Daytona. Yaley's had some good runs at Daytona in the past here and there for some of these smaller teams, and I believe, if memory serves, he drove in relief of Tony Stewart one time. I'm going to have to look that up, but I think he did at one point in the July race. You never know. I mean, with certainly with the craziness that we usually see at Daytona, that's definitely a story that can pick up speed there a little bit. I'm really impressed with the Darrell Waltrip paint schemes that ran. The TV did a pretty good job of showing what those cars look like, but in person they were just glorious. I mean, love seeing the chrome numbers on the number 17 for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I thought that paint scheme came out the best. I mean, really, it was. We'd seen Stenhouse actually when we last went to Darlington back in 2017. We'd seen him do the scheme in similar colors under the fifth third bank. And in the past, I was like, well, okay, I mean, not a big deal. It's not the same colors. I will reverse my decision on that. It does absolutely matter that it's the right colors. And it was the colors of this one here, the 1994 or 91 to 94 or 95 era car, and not this one here where it's like purple in the back of the car. These are the three Darrell Waltrip cars actually that I used in some of the track shots that I was using over the weekend. I just decided to put them out here. So using this scheme here, it really popped and it looked great on the track. So great job on the Roush Fenway team, and great job with the other teams as well. I thought the David Reagan one was going to be really bland looking, but they used like the kind of flat silver color, similar to like Sterling Marlin's car back in the early 2000s, but a little bit flatter than that with of course the decals and everything, the wraps being what they are, but still looked really good. And then you go back to Matt DiBenedetto, and well, that's going to be another big story from all this. How about him? The fourth place finish there in the race there, that was absolutely tremendous. It just really happy for that guy. I mean, we'd seen him have that great run at the Daytona 500 back when we did this first disqualification show earlier this year. Really looked like he was going to turn the corner there in the 95 car. He hadn't finished better than 12th since then. Trying to get some good runs out there. I think people had kind of forgotten a bit that he had been that good earlier in the year, but to churn out that great run there in the fourth place finish, that was just a fantastic job there. So great on him. Let's see. The other paint schemes. I mean, they look pretty good there too. We see, didn't see any road course ringers this time around. I thought that was really surprising. I didn't really expect J.J. Yaley or Reed Sorensen to be on the list. I kept waiting to see if there was going to be a driver change there. Dave Smith indicated that he was probably going to try to petition to get one of those Cup Series rides. I didn't know which team, but that deal ended up falling through, and he was just sticking with the K&N race. But who knows what happens going forward. But that was one thing that was happening. And also, Denny Hamlin going to run the Darrell Waltrip scheme at Darlington in September, so that's going to be interesting to see as well. Great reveal of it over there at Victory Lane on Friday. Let's see. And but yeah, again, great. Really enjoyed the view there on Friday in the carousel. Got to meet with a lot of great people there in the infield at the same time. I had heard on Twitter that Dr. Jerry Punch was going to be showing up. He was actually there because he's good friends with Gary Bechtel, who was the original team owner of the number 29 car back in the mid-90s. Gary Bechtel got admitted to, I believe it was the West Coast Motorsports Hall of Fame. They had a luncheon during the same weekend, and Dr. Punch came out to congratulate him on being inducted into that. He was inducted, I believe, as well as with Jeff Gordon and a few others there as well. And so he was there, and I got to run into him there and thank him for his contributions to the J.D. McDuffie book. And he was one thing I thought was really cool about the Dr. Punch, and I talked to him over the phone. I've never talked to him face to face. He's got that very calm voice, no matter, the voice that he has on pit road there. He doesn't raise his voice or anything. He has a very, very moderate, very professional voice there. And of course, trained from working in the emergency room for all those years down in, I believe he worked out of Florida, if I remember correctly. And as well as his work with ESPN, of course. Class act. Really enjoyed talking with him. And again, congratulations to his friend Gary Bechtel on getting into the Hall of Fame there that weekend. The other person we ran into is Ernie Irvin. We got a brief quote out of him during a previous appearance when Irvin was getting inducted into Sears Point's Hall of Fame at the track a few years ago. We got his quote in there. He was very kind enough to take a picture with the book. I signed one for him there in the media center and brought that out to him. And he was like, yeah, it's like, this is for me. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, come on, man, you're in it. So I definitely wanted to make sure I got that in his hands there. So, we didn't actually get a book signing arranged there. We tried to get something set up there. Time constraints and things like that just didn't quite work out, but that was okay. We did get a couple, the Wine Country Motorsports shop there at Turn 11. They were kind enough to let us sign a couple copies and put them over there in the shop. So that was really cool. So big thanks to the folks over there as well. And we got that done. So Friday was really a more day where we got mostly just pictures. We didn't get really that many interviews. I think the only person I really talked to that day was Reed Sorensen, because Sorensen had a battery issue on the number 27 car with Jay Robinson's team. And I don't know what exactly caused the battery issue, but ultimately they couldn't get the car back out there. He drove the car all the way to the end of pit road. And you could see from, again, that viewing position in turn 2 that he had actually rolled the car out there. And I thought he was just waiting for, a good out lap like a lot of people were doing. People were coming out in waves just like they were during qualifying. And you had an issue with that. Actually, I guess no, I'm sorry. That was in qualifying that happened. That's right. In qualifying, he didn't get back out there. So I guess I didn't talk to Sorensen until Saturday. In qualifying, he had the battery issue and he couldn't get back out there. In practice, he just didn't go out there at all. There was him, the 15 car, and the 00. They all didn't make it out there during the happy hour session. And Sorensen had the battery issue in qualifying, but that didn't count as a penalty that sent him to the back of the field, even though he actually did start in the 38th and final starting spot. So let's see. The other thing that was really cool on Friday, and I haven't watched the full-on broadcast of the race yet, but I'm sure they put it in there, was Darrell Waltrip driving some laps in a number 17 Tide car around the Sears Point Raceway. I still like calling it that. I know they call it Sonoma, but that works better. During as Friday was wrapping up, after both the practice sessions were over with, it was sitting in the media center, and I think they had Martin Truex in there. And Truex was talking about, the car performing in practice. And all of a sudden I look out there on the track, and heading into turn 11 is a number 56 Napa car, which is the car that Truex drove to winning at Sears Point back in 2013. And I'm looking at that. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, like, who's in the car if it's not him? Turns out they had a bunch of older cars there, including one old car of Ernie Irvin's was there, an old Dale Earnhardt car. But the newer of those cars, the Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, and I believe it was there was a Clint Boyer car. Those were all out there doing laps, and Darrell Waltrip was out there at the same time. And what was interesting is, I came down to pit road at that point, and the other cars had pulled in. Boyer's car had pulled in, and the Truex one and all that, and Waltrip was still out there. There's a gentleman that's a local person up here that actually provided the car out here. Stevie was out there, of course, with everyone else, Darrell's wife, and said that car that Darrell was driving wasn't even set up for a road course. It's actually a super speedway car. And Darrell was out there just having a blast. They put a GoPro on the car there and out there, and he was just having a great time. And everybody was wondering how many more laps he was going to take out there. And yeah, I figured he was just going to be out there all night. But they had a wonderful contingent out there. I mean, Mike Joy was out there, as well as his son Scotty. Very, again, great people down there. Jeff Hammond made an appearance at the track that day. I don't know if he was there Saturday, Sunday, but he was definitely there on Friday when he came in. and just a large group of people. When Waltrip rolled in, everybody was clapping when he pulled up there and he climbed out of the car. And then he hopped right back in another car they had. They had a Fox Sports car that actually had Scotty's name on there. Scotty didn't take actually any laps in number 17 out there, but Darrell definitely did. I know he was just having a good time. I did get a chance to actually talk with Darrell during the weekend. That was about the closest I got to seeing him there. I mean, he was getting pulled every which way there through the whole time there, but really a great send off for him. The track and the network certainly, I think, really did a good job actually, giving him a proper send off and doing it the right way, and that was good to see. That was good to see. I mean, as much as I've not been the biggest fan of his particular approach to the broadcast, you can't say that he hasn't had a significant effect in motorsports journalism and in doing these broadcasts, and really right from the start. I mean, the unenviable position of being in this spot where you are now giving like probably one of the most memorable calls in the sports history of calling your brother to winning the Daytona 500 when Michael won that in 2001. And then, of course, for that to be overshadowed by really one of the worst possible tragedies that they could have even imagined at the time period. To start the network under that cloud and really try to kind of bring everybody, help bring everybody out of that moment there. I mean, that's a really big part of that. And yeah, it would have been cool to see see Waltrip out there and driving the car there during the pace laps. I was kind of thinking maybe that was going to happen, but of course the big thing there is, I mean, if you did that, then he wouldn't be able to do the boogity boogity thing from the booth, and he was already going to be out of it. So I think that's why they were doing that on Friday, and that was a good decision there. So they were able to do both of those, and so again, great job for Waltrip. I think that was a proper send off there. I mean, he did seem I think he seemed a little exhausted a bit. I think that it reminded me a little bit of Richard Petty at Daytona in July of '92 when he was getting pulled every direction during his last run at Daytona. And he ended up getting pulled out of the car, just exhausted from that. Had to have Eddie Bierschwal drive the car, and then Bierschwal got pulled out. Again, that'll be a similar topic we'll talk about when we get to the race itself. But good send off there for Waltrip, and again, I haven't watched the full broadcast yet, but from what I was able to piece together from that, it seemed like they really took the efforts to actually do a good job with that. So that was good to see. This brings us to I think the picture that got some of the most traffic this week was the picture that we had with Noah Gragson and Haley Deegan outside the garage area there. They were actually right outside the garage on Friday between the practice sessions there, just talking with each other, and I didn't recognize them at first, and then I took a picture. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's them. So I didn't listen into really what they were talking about at the time. I followed up with them afterwards, the day after, and that was just kind of awkward. I think in the future I need to just do these interviews like right when the moment happens. It became kind of a learning experience from that standpoint. But really cool. I think there's a lot of positive reception to that, of just like the future of the sport and which personalities are up there. I mean, certainly Haley's had a fantastic season this year, winning on the Las Vegas dirt track, and then getting in that scuffle there with her teammate there. People are getting really excited about that. And Gregson up there, getting his work done there. The Truck Series is cool to see him come out here to California. Unfortunately, the situation with his race in Saturday was kind of overshadowed by some other situations, and we'll talk about that, of course, as well. Let's see, just looking through these other pictures here, and that really brings us to Saturday qualifying and the race itself. The issue with the cabin heat kind of started coming up a little bit at this point, because the passenger side windows were making their road course debut in this race, and I talk about this in the article there on the website. A lot of teams, when they're rolling the cars out, they weren't actually keeping that passenger side window in there. They popped it out and kind of just stuck it in the window there sideways, so there would still be some ventilation. The past of the short tracks and the road courses, we haven't seen that window in there. And even with the new aero package that they debuted this year in 2019, it was something that hasn't been talked about that much. But certainly the issue of heat exhaustion, I think, is going to be a much bigger story here in these next few weeks. And we saw really the first chapter of that this weekend at Sonoma. And we'll go ahead and jump into that. Actually, I think chronologically isn't working for this, but That was definitely a bit of a troubling issue. And Parker Kligerman came up to me, or I come up to him actually after the race was over, and he had a chance to cool down a bit there, so he didn't seem as exhausted as some other people that I'd seen. But he said it was just absolutely atrocious in there. I mean, that was the word he used. Once you had the window on the car, there's just absolutely no circulation in the car. The heat just gets just absolutely oppressive. And the issue is that there are cool suits out there that are pretty good, but they're between $11,000 and $15,000 to buy a new one. And it also it also is something that you can't just set it and forget it. You can't just use it and then throw it in the laundry and then wear it again. You have to have somebody basically that their full-time job is to just maintain this thing because they wear out really easily. So that's the issue with that. And when you don't have those suits, your options are still very limited. It was interesting that, I think back to like 1993, and they were talking about having new technology where you basically put a cool box in the back of the car, just put ice in that, and have a fan that just runs that through the system. And then, of course, those get knocked over or freeze up or anything. You think back to, we mentioned there, Richard Petty in 1992. You think back even further back to Ricky Rudd in 1998 when a cool box failed at the beginning of a very hot race there. And even with the passenger side window open, barely made it to the finish of that race. So a really crazy situation there. And I think I was about to tweet this. I don't know if I did, but I think it's why we saw somebody like Matt DiBenedetto having such a great run, a guy that's just in fantastic physical shape. Jimmy Johnson also being a marathoner, and these other competitors that are just that physically fit. Not saying the other drivers aren't, but there's different gradations of that. Seeing them get up towards the front of the field, it was just a really difficult situation for people just in general, and it was a lot for people to overcome. JJ Yaley was, again, he was really exhausted there. I mean, even after making several stops with the fuel pressure issue, he ended up coming in there and he was stuffing ice bags in and just drinking whatever he can drink. And again, big props to him for still talking to me for just a couple minutes. I wasn't going to keep him much longer than that. He was sitting in the shade just next to the car there when I was talking to him. You look at the article on the website there for an example of just what that looked like. But this, of course, leads to the issue with Cody Ware, the number 52 car, and that was really a scary moment. Chase Elliott had broken down moments before that, and I was with the other media members that were in the garage area at the time where they were all waiting to speak with Chase. And at the time, I wasn't sure if Chase was going to be the last place finisher because I was hearing over the radio that the 51 team was thinking about coming back out there and running another lap, another 7 laps they would basically need to do to get back around the 9 car. However, right before that, I'd also heard that they'd made it official that Yaley was out. So at that point, I was thinking, well, look, I mean, there's not going to be any information I'm going to be able to get from him, so I was going to head back to the media center. About that time, I see the 52 car pull up behind the hauler there, the Rick Ware Racing hauler, and I come up there, and Cody's starting to get out of the car, and he has to actually get helped out of the car, much like Ricky Rudd in '98. And I don't know how serious of a situation it was there, but as his father Rick told me that this was a case of carbon monoxide poisoning that he was saying at the time there. Although I'm sure the heat had a factor in that as well. After speaking with Kligerman and Yaley around that same time there, he had to be attended to. He was conscious when I came up there. He was treated by medical staff when he came up there. I just got out of the way, when they came up there. I mean, I had no business being up there at that point. I checked with the team there to make sure it was okay that I said that, this was what was going on. Because, I mean, certainly you see in the official results, it shows him out by fatigue. You want to know what was happening. And he said, yeah, that was fine. So I just did that and I left that as it is. But that's basically the whole story on that deal there. And we certainly do wish Cody well as he recovers from that. Although the team did tell me that he was doing much better. And, hopefully, we see him, if not at Chicagoland, hopefully back at the track very soon. But a difficult situation for him. And the Rick Ware team in general, of course, Yaley getting the last place finish and Cody down to the bottom 5 there as well. Skipping around here, going back to the Saturday race, of course, that was really kind of the big craziness through the entire weekend there. Although the Sunday race ended up being relatively calm by comparison, The Saturday race turned into a real barn burner. I don't know if it's been posted yet on from the Fans Choice broadcast at the time, but it was really wild. The Saturday race began with the last place starter in the field. What was that driver again? That was the Thackeray. Thackeray's car, the number 38, at the back of the field there. They had blown an engine in qualifying. They still lined the car up at the back because they had just enough cars to start the race, much like the Cup Series field. And the moment that they fired the engines, I was speaking to, I believe it was Luis Torres at the time at the media center, which is a perfect overview of the front half of pit road. I could see when they fired the engines, they started pushing the 38 out of line like right away. I was like, well, this is strange. And so I snapped those pictures and jumped down there. Got down to the 38 cars. They pushed it back. There were 2 crew members, and the rest were just a bunch of track officials pushing the 38 back into the garage area. And I was asking them like what was going on with the car there, and both of them just said, I don't know. And I was like, I tried pressing them on that, and they wouldn't really tell me anything on that. And then at the same time, they had trouble pushing the cars. They had a golf cart that was with the team, and they tried to push the car with that, and the car wouldn't move, so they had to get on the flatter part of the because there's a rise there from pit road up to where the K&N West Series garage is, which is behind the Cup Series garage. So they got back out there and they got the car pushed back there. I saw that Thackeray wasn't actually in the car at the time. I didn't realize until somebody else pointed this out that the driver had hopped out and he was put into the 34 car, replacing John Wood, who was just having a miserable time driving the number 34 car in practice and spun it out a few times there during the weekend. So he got to race in the race, and that car ended up being did not start at the back of the field. So the last place battle got settled very quickly. And about this point, somebody on Twitter told me that the Fans Choice broadcast wasn't working. I see you bringing that up there. Yeah, Beast of Metal 1989. I can confirm that yeah, the broadcast wasn't working online. And so, at that point, yeah, I didn't have anything. I was going to do an article on the K&N West race really anyway, because I was going to focus more on the Cup and trucks. So at that point, I just kind of tried to do a live broadcast as quick as I could with the Twitter there in the meantime, and just bang out what I could do on there. I know Utter and some other guys in there were doing it too, so it was good that information was able to get covered as best as possible. Certainly the beginning of the race was much like the end of it. You had a lot of cautions. It was very much the opposite of the Cup Series race, where a lot of cautions were brought out by things that shouldn't have brought out cautions. A lot of people that just spun out and they had plenty of room to run off, or they spun and they stalled for a little while. And did that really need to bring out a caution? Like, no. I mean, not to say there weren't cautions for reasons. There certainly were, much later in the race. But let me pull up the results here and kind of review what happened at the first part. Certainly Noah Gragson had a fantastic car at the start of it there, starting from the outside pole. He just had the field covered the first 22 laps there, and had a good showing. Yeah, that's right. They just had it looks like just had debris cautions. The 08 car ran off track in turn 2. Yeah, he had a problem with the carousel earlier. That was a Travis Milburn car. He had to get pushed around the track. I think that was about the only thing that was really missed in the first part of it, other than Gregson's dominance, although some great racing further back in the pack. But Gragson had the lead there. Then they get a caution. They get a restart. He goes out there. He's on the front row, and he takes off. And then they black flag him. They give him the Ernie Irvin penalty. They say that he was jumping the start, and so they make him come back in. They do, I believe it was a stop-and-go penalty, drops him back in the field, and then from there on, he becomes a story. And even people in the media center were just tracking his every move, seeing how many cars he could pass. And he was doing it. He was doing it in places that you really probably thought that you couldn't pass. I think there's a clip that I posted a while back of, I believe it was Ken Peterson, who ended up later on replacing Gary Bradbury to qualify the number 19 car at Sears Point in 1997. Peterson actually had a similar situation where he was charging through the field at a Southwest Tour race, and he had driven the car so hard that he blew, I believe it was the transmission on the car there. But that did not happen to Gragson. He got back up towards the front, but it seemed like third was about as far as he was going to get. He had a really good battle with Cole Custer and Austin Dillon towards the end. He and Dillon in particular were really scrapping it there at the end. And Hemrick and Gragson seemed like they were going to be pulling away. Hemrick managed to get up there and at least get shore down to second place finish there as best he could. And you had Ryan Preece holding the lead there, the 47 car, and his car was just perfect, didn't have a scratch on it. He was just cruising. He was leading the rest of the way. And then another caution comes out, and we get another restart. Race gets pushed well past its scheduled distance because they had several more cautions brought out at the end of the race, including issues with Jim Englebright, who was just pummeling his number one car to pieces, getting tangled with other cars there towards the end. He's according to him, we caught up to him after the race. He was just getting double teamed by both the number 6 and the number 9 car from the Sunrise Ford team, and they were just roughing him up. And he's an old school driver. I mean, he used to drive the Jelly Belly car back in the early 2000s, back when I was a kid, and he's still out there. And he wasn't going to take it, and so they were scrapping it back there. And while this is all happening, Priest takes the green flag. The green flag waves. He takes off. He does get a great restart that clears Daniel Hemrick, and he gets black flag soon after. Gets the exact same penalty as Gragson, and then he goes out there. He's running the car to the distance, and the 47 gets black flagged, and Gragson gets the win. And everybody is just confused. I'm just standing. I mean, at this point, I'm on the pit road because I think there's going to be a fight. And I haven't been at a race where there's been a full-on conflagration, but I thought for sure if anything was going to be crazy, something that's like a reenactment of 1991 at Sears Point certainly is going to be. But much like 1991, where there wasn't a fight there between Davey Allison's crew and Ricky Rudd's, there wasn't one in this case either. Closest thing that happened, though, was, again, the Englebright thing. Englebright comes in, and his car pulls in past the media center halfway between the two parts of the pit road, because there's a bend at turn 12 that separates it in half. Englebright comes around the corner there, and he's, again, getting followed by the 6 and 9 cars out there. And Englebright stops to keep them from getting into the garage area. One of them pulls around him, and it looks like Englebright's going to steer the car towards him, but the one car has so much damage. The front valence is falling off of the car at this point. And so Englebright's just sitting there at this point. And then, the 6, I believe it was the 9 car is getting around Englebright. And at the same time, Haley Deegan's car is coming right in front of me to try to get around. She almost gets hit by the 9 car. Just a complete, there was basically a fight, but the fight was just basically between these cars just trying to get out of each other's way. It ended up being that the 2 Sunrise Ford cars didn't pull into the garage area at least right away. They were sitting there on pit road. Englebright went into the garage area along with everybody else, along with Ryan Priest. And but while I was down there, Priest came up, and I saw him walking by. And this is where I learned a little bit of a lesson that I got to say. I'm not saying that I haven't had a situation where I've talked with drivers that have been upset. I'm getting used to that. And again, I think my work in the emergency room has kind of helped with that, being in situations where people either don't want to be there or they certainly don't want to talk to somebody. But I knew that this was the story for sure. Priest came up, and he was walking towards the garage area, and I managed to intercept him about the same spot where I ran into Casey Kane at IndyCar last year. And I was talking to him, and I had my recorder out there, and I said, well, it was like, Ryan, clearly not the outcome that you wanted. What's your thoughts on what happened out there? And I did this, and he said, no comment. And at that point, the mistake I made was I didn't ask a second question. I took the no means no approach to the interview. And the problem with that, of course, was I backed up, and then Claire B. Lang and everybody else was swooping in right then, because Priest, in the process of doing this, had cornered himself against the gate that led into the garage area. And the gate that led into the garage area was closed because the Cup Series cars were impounded and nobody else was coming in there. So he was just standing there. And at this point, it was just a full-on group. There was all these people just came out of the woodwork. And and again, nothing against Claire. I mean, she's a pro. You learn from people like that. And she was fantastic, helped promote the book and everything too. And she was right on it. She got right in there and brought him over to victory lane and asked the exact 4 questions that you need to ask in an interview like that. What happened? Are you going to challenge it with NASCAR? And and everything else from there. So she got the quote, and I was thinking, okay, so from now on, if somebody gives me a 1-word answer like that, I'm going to make sure I ask a second question. And that second question is going to be the icebreaker. And that ended up actually playing a role the rest of the weekend. If you look in the footage of the interview with Priest, you can see me in the background there. And at the point when that happened, I was like, well, okay, I'm much like the Chase Elliott thing. I'm not going to get any information out of this that I, otherwise. So At that point, I went back and I looked for Engelbright because I had talked to him the year before, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get this story at least. And so I got that, and that was good. I don't know if anybody else did, but I got that quote, and I banged that out about as quick as I could and put that up on Twitter. And that was good to get because that was, he's, again, a classy guy. He said there was not going to be any problems with him and the Sunrise team in the future races there, but that ended up being a very crazy situation there from that. But a crazy race for sure. The crowd didn't seem to know exactly what to do about that. I mean, there were some that were cheering, there were some that weren't. There were guys that were jeering the people in the Sunrise cars. There was somebody that yelled, "Hold Daddy's hand!" I heard that at one point, and I'm like, "Oh man!" It's like, man, this is good. That's the point where I thought it was going to be a fight or anything, but nothing came of it. At least nothing that I saw. But I got out of that at that point. But that definitely raised the hopes that Sunday's race was going to be crazy because in between all of this, there was just fantastic racing out there. Gregson's drive, again, very similar to Peterson's in '89, really brought to mind, all these great passing zones. And something that I brought up on the social media there as well was the greatest thing about that is that you can actually have these cars slow down a bit more by making turn 4 a big braking zone so you can set up for the complex into the carousel. You have created a situation that now it's not flat out all the way down into turn 7, just coasting down this downhill portion. You have now created a log jam that backs everybody else up into each other. And that was what happened, especially, and the K&N cars are really sensitive to this. They would be running over each other, they'd be spinning out, they'd be knocking each other out of the way. This is a good course. And even though the Cup race wasn't the most competitive Cup race, at least from what I was seeing, I don't know what everybody else's thoughts were on it. This was, this track has a lot of potential, and I hope they stay with this configuration because I think it's going to be really good. And I think that we just had a situation here where it was just really difficult for with the heat and things like that. Perhaps if the schedule gets adjusted and we end up getting pushed back to either May, like the race used to be back in 1997, or even further back into the West Coast swing, I think you'll see some better competition because you're gonna take that heat element out of it. It does emphasize more the definitely the physicality that these drivers have to have, the athleticism and everything. But at the same time, I think that does come at the cost of the racing a little bit because it becomes about survival, and you are just out there and you are trying to get to the finish. And this race was actually longer than it used to be back in 1997. It used to be 74 laps. This time around, it was 90 laps. That is a huge difference to run here, and that's so they can keep the same logo. There's still a Toyota Save Mart 350. It used to be the Save Mart Supermarkets 300 back then, and that was the difference, difference in laps. And it's even a longer distance than it used to be with the chute. When you had the chute, I believe the difference came out to about 7 miles longer, less of a difference than it was from the 97 configuration with the 74 laps, but still much longer this time around. And that's no small difference. If you run out of gas 7 miles short of the finish, you are still not going to win the race. You're going to fall further back, not to quote a terrible broadcastism. But this was a very difficult race to run, and that's where it really became a challenge. So I think if we do end up having the race move back, or if it gets a different date that's in a cooler part of the year, I think you will see the quality of the racing improve. Although, since we still saw a wild and insane K&N race under very similar conditions, it was not that much hotter on Sunday versus Saturday. It was a little hotter, but not by much. And there was really good breeze, especially on Friday, that was blowing through the carousel. That was, I think, maybe that'll play a role. Maybe it won't. We have seen in the last few years not a lot of cautions, not a lot of pit stops, and coming down to just some really bizarre strategy with the stages. That's a whole other issue with that too. I'll go ahead and mention this aside. They have to do something with the stages of the road courses. I don't think that these stage cautions are conducive to current road course racing. I think that what you have with that format is you have now created a situation where these drivers can't count the race backwards from the finish line. And I know that with the technology and everything being what it is, that all reduces the mystery of the sport and what the sport is and what is going to bring the field closer together. Everybody's going to figure all this stuff out. It's not going to be a mystery anymore. But I think when you didn't have any stages out there, you didn't have a guaranteed break, and everybody has to come in before the caution comes out, and it's a race to get in there before that light turns on. That seems to take a lot of the gamesmanship out of that. And even though Cole Pern is a fantastic crew chief, and his call last year in particular, and to a degree this year also, was the deciding factor in this race as well. It's just not as sporting as it used to be, and I think that's something that could be looked at. The example I look at is versus the Gillette Halfway Challenge that they used to do. They used to have a bonus prize for whoever was leading at the halfway lap. That's unfortunately gone the way of the dinosaur. But back in the day, when they did the Gillette Halfway Challenge, they didn't throw a caution for it. They declared a winner, but then you had to keep going. And if you want to think about gambling to get stage points, if you have to have stages, and I'm not convinced that we do anymore, but if you have to have stages, if everybody's convinced that we have to do these stages and do these stage points, then do it that way. Don't throw a caution for it. I'd say don't throw a caution for it anywhere. I mean, what the heck? Because if somebody's going to go out there and maybe take a 2-tire stop to try to get some stage points, knowing that the race is going to keep going at that point, and they may lose a lap or something because they have to make a pit stop soon after, that's really going to be dramatic. That's going to be really interesting. And you can still have just as much focus and all that on who's going to be the stage winner. But then, you don't have that caution there to just completely ruin pit strategy and just make it, an eventuality. Because maybe at an oval, you can have a stretch that's long enough that it almost fools you into thinking that the whole race was going green flag or something. But at a road course, there's not enough laps for it. And especially running this old configuration again, you still don't have enough laps for it. You have enough laps for maybe doing it once, but I mean, that's not, by then, once you've ended stage 2, you've pretty much decided who's going to be there. I mean, Truex seemed to be up there that whole time in stage 3, and that was basically it. Again, I haven't watched the broadcast yet, and following the back of the field, I'm not necessarily the most observant at the front of the field, but that's the way it looked like to me. But that was a different thing. So, again, crazy K&N race. I don't agree necessarily with the call they did for Priest. I'm not even sure if I agree with the call they did for Gragson. It's strange to have somebody jump the start and have that not be called. But in the Cup Series, they seem like they're really not very sensitive to that anymore. Didn't we have this issue back in Charlotte, I think, a few weeks ago? Seems like this was an issue not long ago. But in the K&N race, for whatever reason, if somebody was just taken off by the restart zone, that was just ridiculous. And you had, and especially with the Priest one, you could see that they're waving the flag by the time he's going again. So that was really unusual. But yeah, I mean, this was a good deal there. So a good deal for Gragson, but a bad deal for Priest. But and again, as much as I'm opposed to really having Cup guys in the Xfinity series, I think in the K&N West series, it seems like they're almost on a more level playing field. In some cases, they're driving for teams that just have older steel-bodied cars like Gragson and Priest did. And I think that really levels the playing field versus the composite body cars for the full season people like Haley Deegan and those guys over there. So really interesting to see. Really interesting to see. I think that made for a good race. Saturday we ended up getting a bit more interviews. That was good. That was good to see. I mean, it was people were a little bit easier to reach on that day. In my experience, Friday usually seems to be the best day to get interviews because if I don't do it by that point, it seems like I'm not going to really get anybody. But Saturday was really good. Saturday was really good. I think that was the point that I talked with Sorensen about the battery issue they have on the 27 car, and we did some more stuff there relating to a project that we'll get into more further down the line. Yeah, I mean, this was really the big thing. And then once all that had wrapped up, of course, get back up while we're grabbing dinner. We're watching the Truck Series race in Gateway, of course. And the great thing with the Truck Series race in Gateway was as a standalone weekend, you have a great opportunity for people that are like first timers getting into the series or real underdogs out there. Greg Rail was one of them. Lou Goss, the McMahon person. I'm trying to remember what I know his last name was McMahon, but the first name escapes me. But all three of them getting into the field there and having exactly that many trucks for the starting grid. I think that was good to see. Although it'd be great, of course, to get more entrants than you have. The Cody McMahon, right? Correction. I just got a tweet actually from that team's spotter that said that they had something break in the right front of the car, right front of the truck rather. that caused them to get tangled up there here for them. But it ended up being a full bottom 5 on that. Greg Rail falling out at the very beginning, clobbering the wall there in the Jennifer Joe Cobb truck. So, unfortunate situation. We're actually seeing a lot of wrecks from the Cobb team lately, and that can't be good for a team that has as limited resources as they do. Hopefully, things kind of turn around for certainly for them. Let's see, what was that again? I'm getting the tweet pulled up here. Yes, from Jerry Kennedy. Big thanks to Mr. Kennedy here, saying the one truck broke apart on the right front that caused the crash. So that was the story on that. That ended up putting him in the bottom 5. That was not the situation with Greg Rail, as far as I can tell. It looked like that may have been a tire issue. But that was a short evening for him in his first start at 55 years old. Really cool to see. And Lou Goss, after, again, big thanks to our ARCA correspondent, William Saki, for bringing our attention the drive that he was going to be doing in the old Mike Harmon truck, formerly out of Green Bay. Finally getting to make his first start, so he's now in the record books. Even though it was a bottom 5 finish and only made about 12 laps, still good to get it back out there. I mean, that's what separates, that's what separates drivers from others there. So that's good to see. Also really pleased with the tributes to Mike Mittler that evening. Certainly the name on the trophy, bringing his family out, doing the lap 63 salute. They really went above and beyond on that. I really have to applaud the Gateway track for that, because you can't overstate how important Mittler was to the Truck Series and the beginnings of so many careers. If you want to talk about Jamie McMurray, if you want to talk about the late Tony Roper, who they saluted through the entire time of that team, all the way up to Jesse Iwuji, who we saw run at Phoenix last year, and apparently was at the Sonoma Raceway. I just missed him that weekend. But he was running, he ran the number 63 truck last time that Mittler fielded it. Of course, DJ Cobb is apparently still running the team right now and is hoping to run the truck some races later this year. I was told by Cobb that they're still planning on running some more races. We haven't heard about when that's going to happen, but we'll have some more information on that. But of course, the man of the hour in that race was Ross Chastain, again pulling off another victory. I don't know how he maintains this positive attitude through all this. I think we talked about this during Iowa and the disqualification he had there. It's always one step forward and 2 steps back with him, and he seems to always constantly be in the same position. But I think for every time that that's happened to him, he's just getting that much more and more popular. And the drive that he had at Gateway, almost at Kentucky, at Gateway, great run for him there. Gutsy call by the crew, doing the whole Dale Inman thing there and running the truck on old tires there, holding off very fast Kyle Busch Motorsports truck, holding off the both of them. That was no small accomplishment, especially with that restart at the end. They didn't need that, but they did it, and they held him off, and they got the win. He did not get disqualified. He did not replace Greg Rail in last place. So Ross Chastain, now the goal is to stay in the top 20 in points, which he should be able to do in the next few weeks, and get back up there. And so a great job by Ross Chastain. And after winning the race, I still thought he wasn't going to bother coming out here, because I figured, well, okay, let's just, he's probably going to go back to the shop and figure out something for the following week. Nope. He flew back and was here at 3 in the morning. And on Sunday morning, I saw him walking into the Spire Motorsports hauler, which confirmed what we pretty much had all known, that the Spire Motorsports team is another Jay Robinson effort. If you looked at the wheels they had in the garage area, they had stickers showing the 15, the 27, and the 77 on there. So it's all a combined effort there between those efforts. He went into the Spire Motorsports hauler, got his Premium Motorsports uniform on, and I was able to catch him on the way out. And he was very nice to talk to me for a bit there about, how late he got in there and how much of a load off it was there to actually finally break through with that win. And he was set for yet another challenge. He'd never started at the Sonoma Raceway before. Goes back in the car, goes out there, finishes just 33rd in the race, but keeps it between the lines. And on a very hot day, driving a black car, wearing a black uniform, sure that absorbed the most heat possible. Still got the finish there, so good for him. And he was getting, literally, as we were talking, he was getting congratulated by everybody coming down there. Right when I talked to him, one of his friends came up to him and was shaking his hand and just saying, it's like, man, I almost flipped my table over when that last caution came out, because I just couldn't believe it. He's like, no, we can't have another restart. And Ross was like, yeah, I couldn't believe that happened either. And really cool, down to earth guy, and talked to him about that, about his plan for the race there, and went back out there, and the track activities picked up pretty quick from there. Actually, during that whole morning, I'd actually talked with a few LASTCAR fans there. So if you're watching out there, I know Brandon, you were one of them there. Big thanks for you guys coming out there and saying, hey Logan, welcome aboard. That was a really good deal there at the meet with people there. Uh, it's weird, I mean, it doing this website and doing things like that with the last place thing. Sometimes, you're never sure how many people are watching or how many people follow the website or anything. But this weekend was really, really a good positive indicator of just how far, we've come in this and all that, and how far, really, getting excited for things, further ahead. And so again, thank you to you viewers out there, and to those of you in the Patreon, and those of you just following the website and sharing the link and everything. Like, that's been huge. And so, ran to one guy wearing a LASCAR hat, and the other guy was wearing one of these shirts. That was really cool. That was really cool. That really means a lot to me, because when you go to a racetrack, I know when I was a kid, I go over to a racetrack, it's like, okay, I'm going to pick like my best shirt that I could wear. I'm going to get like the craziest one that I could, do, or something like that. And what I wear for race day is like, that's going to be like, what I'm really excited about. To see people be that excited about wearing that gear, that's really cool. I never even thought about that. So really cool to see, especially for, the home track and everything too. So that was cool. Actually, one person, when we got off the shuttle coming in on Sunday, there was a young fan. I apologize, I didn't get his name, but if you're out there watching, I thought this was really cool. He was there with his father, and he said he was high functioning autistic, and he was a big fan of the website. He said that the stuff we do on the website here is like an inspiration for him, and that got me. That got me. So that was really cool. So I talked with him there. I mean, he was really, really cool kid out there. So if you're watching out there, man, I really appreciate your support. So that got my day started off the right way, I'll tell you what. So, but it was a hot day. I mean, I can't overstate this. It was nice on Friday, and it got warmer through the weekend there, but that was that was a crazy deal, and I can't imagine, just driving in the car today, going to mail the book out there. It was like, that felt hot enough. And when you roll the windows up there, I can't imagine doing that in the Cup Series cars or anything like that. So that was a crazy deal with that. But the race started pretty quickly. I was a little bit flustered at the start, because I was juggling both the little screen there with the race view on it on the tablet, and then I had the scanner going and all that. I can't wait till my headphones come in, because that's going to make that a whole lot easier. We should get those before the next race that we do. But we got settled in there, and I tracked what was happening at the start. To make things even more confusing, the Rick Ware teams apparently used each other's radio frequencies. The 52 was on the 51 and vice versa. So big thanks to the user that gave me a heads up on that. That was such a confusing thing for me. I was starting to listen to Cody Ware's and thinking it was Yaley and vice versa, but that got cleared up. So we kind of figured that out, and made an unusual deal there. But it was unusual. It was unusual. I fully expected, especially after everything that happened in the K&N race, that the last place battle was going to get settled very quickly. And those of you who were picking for the J.D. McDuffie book and had picked a low number count for any driver, not, I mean, there were some drivers that got a disproportionate number versus others. Those of you that picked a low count, I thought you had a very good chance of winning. But big props to, and I see you in the chat there, Mr. Owen. Congratulations again. You were the winner for the book here. I'll get my picks for Chicagoland here shortly. But yeah, good call by you to actually get a high lap count for Yaley, because I didn't even see that coming. And that's where it's going to be tricky to even pick somebody for Chicagoland. So that'll be that whole deal too. But it was an endurance match. I didn't realize that everybody was going to be, again, just playing it so clean there at the beginning of the race, and Yaley pretty much being in last for most of the time until he got back on the lead lap, and then there was a little exchange on pit road. A number of drivers crunched to the noses of their cars at the start of the race, so I was basically just glued to the screen there at the start. I don't like really doing that, but again, no two last place battles are the same. I bet I've seen some where a driver falls out on the first lap, and I got to hustle to the garage area like right away. The thing in the K&N race is a perfect example of that. Other races are just like this one, and you have to just sit there and just watch the screen and just wait for something to happen there and listen really closely to the radio if anything out of the ordinary occurs. This was definitely one of those cases, and Yaley was saying that he was getting really exhausted. The car was really tight, especially on the right-hand turns. He put in some ice packs. They had, by lap 21, he said they weren't doing anything, and the fuel pressure was down to 6 pounds, and it's not supposed to run below 20. It was just becoming, a lot going on. But even then, he was either on the lead lap or close to it. I mean, the field was just that close together. And then you had a situation like that come up. But then, much like last year, when A.J. Allmendinger and Jamie McMurray fell out at the same time, as we talked about earlier, you had the situation with Chase Elliott. You had the situation with Cody Ware and both Yaley about the same time. The garage area filled up pretty quick from there. Well, actually, it didn't. That was I tell a lie. That they were it did not fill up very quickly from there because everybody else was out there just running 2 laps down from there. I mean, Haley and Sorensen ran out the bottom 5, I remember correctly, and they were still out there 2 laps down. So this is the challenge. I mean, and if you're watching a race, the winner is always going to get to victory lane at the end. If you're following last place, it could happen right at the start, like the situation with Thackeray on Saturday, or it could happen halfway to 2/3 through the race, and you don't even get a chance to go in the garage area until then. So that's what makes this deal so challenging and but enjoyable at the same time. No 2 days are the same. No 2 races are the same. You never know what you're going to get or what you're going to be writing about, and I think that's the most exciting thing of all. That was certainly a good deal there. So. We did cover, we covered the Yaley situation, we covered Chase Elliott's thing, and the situation with Cody Ware. We wrapped up the rest of the race. By the time we got back up to the media center after all the goings on in the garage, it's about 15 laps to go. And all of a sudden up there, it's Martin Truex, it's Kyle Busch, and then 12 seconds back, it's Ryan Blaney. And it's like, okay, well, that's not good. So I figured if the K&N race was any indication, somebody was going to break down or somebody was going to, pull off the track or something like that. And because it seemed like they were just getting trigger happy with the cautions the day before, and I figured this was going to be no different. I was completely wrong about that. It was very much like the last 2 years, and it was just a 46-lap run to the green, and you had to just absolutely keep it between the lines. And now that I'm describing this, I'm thinking about interviewing Patrick Carpentier a couple of years ago when he got out of the 32 car, and just how exhausted he was coming back out. And it was just trying to keep it straight and everything. It was very much a situation just like that. But we came down to the end of the race, and Matt Benedetto is really making his presence known. And again, the 95 car is working his way up there. He's in the top 5. Then suddenly he's tracking down Kevin Harvick for 4th, and he makes a move in turn 4 that sticks. He gets by somebody, I think that was earlier before he's tracking down Harvick, and then he gets up to Harvick in turn 11. He just dives underneath him, gets the spot, works right by, perfectly clean pass, and suddenly Matty D is in the picture again. We hadn't seen him since, again, Daytona and really the opening disqualification show this year. And before that, you think back to Bristol driving for BK Racing. You think about all the times that he's been featured on LASTCAR when he was starting parking for TriStar Motorsports, or even further back with the Motorsports Group. This is a guy who has paid his dues. And this is something that was featured in the other thing that we worked on this week. And we'll get into that too. But, Matt Benedetto getting down to the finish, when it got down to about 3 or 4 laps to go, I couldn't stand it. I had to go down there and be there when he pulled in because, I had to know what his reaction was going to be once he pulled in. Now, the tricky thing with Sears Point, again, is that length of pit road. And there are pit stalls both in front of about half of them in front of the media center that you can see, and the other half are behind the media center, and you can't really see them at all unless you're in the building. So when it comes down to the end of the race, you really do have to know where the cars are going to be parked and where the cars pit. And even then, it's not a perfect system. because when the race is over, the cars file down pit road, and it's not necessarily guaranteed that they're all going to go to the very end of pit road, and you don't know what order they're going to come into. So there's a lot of factors that come into play. Complicating this even further is when they added the new the media cage there at the end of pit road. It was in pit stall 9, which was Michael McDowell's pit towards the end. And you would set up in there and you would wait for the drivers to come back out after they get out of the cars, so TV can do their interviews, and then they come back over to you for quotes. So I was going down there, and I didn't realize that the 95 cars pit was right basically near the media cage there. So I stopped by there. That's where I got the footage of the 95 crew celebrating after he pulled off the finish there. So that was really cool. That was a cool moment to see. Everybody was. It may seem really reserved in the footage, but they were all like giving each other high fives and clapping and everything, and that was good to see. So really happy for that team. That's a team that, you know, has also, much like the driver, paid its dues as well. I mean, they were a start and park team featured on this website just as much as everyone else. Scott Riggs driving for them in 2012. David Starr giving them their start at Texas back when they were Levine Fenton Racing, and also running races in the lower tier divisions. Back when the car looked more like Lightning McQueen's car. That was that whole time period there. And now look where they are. They've had Casey Kane before. And of course, the unfortunate way that he retired also from heat exhaustion and just extreme dehydration at Darlington last year. Now they're back in there. They're factors, and really happy for that team there. But again, going back to the difficulties of pit road and where these teams pull up, apparently he stopped at Austin Dillon's pit, which was way back up at the other end of pit road. And so we didn't see him for a while. When he was doing the interview on Fox, that was a whole other thing. And then he had to walk all the way back down to the media cage back where we were. And he stayed for every one of us. There was a group of us, maybe about, I don't know, 15, 20 people, if that. That might be on the high end. But it was a lot of people. And we were standing in there, and it was really hard to get in. You had all the people. You had Gluck was there, Pockrass. Lee Spencer was there, Claire B. Lang, of course. Just everybody was getting in there. Everybody was getting their piece. And, you know, I was towards the end of it. I was just kind of letting it play out and just getting some pictures along the way. And, you know, and there's some great pictures that got posted in the video and everything, too. So that was good to see. Or posted on the Twitter page, rather. I was pretty much the last guy. By the time I was speaking to him, the PR person was walking him back there and giving him some ice and, you know, drinks, much like everybody else. But, you know, he was really cool. The person right before me asked the exact same question that I was going to ask. And I was going to phrase it in terms of, you know, what it meant for him. I don't like doing the what it means to you thing there, but this was kind of significant. Like, you know, given the fact that we had written about him being a LASTCAR champion in the past, really recent history, and all that. I mean, you know, this wasn't even that long ago before he was in this position. I mean, he was a guy that nobody was really talking about. The Daytona 500 run seemed to blindside a lot of people. And even the fact that he was getting a lot of attention for making himself a free agent after leaving the 32 car last year, which was going to be a stable ride. Maybe not the best ride, but a stable ride. You know, I caught up to him there, was walking with him down pit road. And what was interesting was it was the exact reverse of Ross Chastain. It was the exact same thing from there. As he was walking back into the garage area, he was getting the same amount of congratulations that Ross was as he was coming in. And everybody very appreciative of him. And you know, his family was there, or at least it looked like it was his family, at least a close friend that was there with him. And they were congratulating him and everything like that, and you know, shaking his hand. We got some pictures of that. And you know, just it may have been not the most competitive Cup Series race in general, but it was a good weekend in general for the underdogs. And I think that's really the big takeaway to take from this. Between the great run for Matt Benedetto, the win in the Gateway race for Ross Chastain, Noah Gragson coming from behind in the K&N race. He may not be an underdog necessarily. He's a standout already in the Truck Series and Xfinity now, right? He's driving with JR Motorsports. You know, he's definitely on the ascendancy. It's unfortunate for Ryan Preece, because that would have been a great feather in his cap. It seems like he's really a guy that, you know, from his ability to dodge accidents, it's unfortunate he wasn't able to dodge penalties in that one, and that ended up being the storyline in the Saturday race. But you know, a good deal from there. I mean, it was, you know, basically just let things wrap up from there. Like I say, I didn't really talk to Truex or anything after that, and we talked with Kligerman in the garage area after the race was over with, and he gave me the interview that really kind of set me on the course to doing the feature that we just did today on the heat. I figured that would be a good timely thing to cover. But gosh, my face looks so red in the camera. I'm better absorb a good amount of heat. But the really good weekend in general. Like it was, I thought it was a very productive weekend. We got even some work done on the next project after the JD McDuffie book here too. Even that was able. We got some material that is going to work with that as well. Again, not ready for the announcement yet, but hopefully we'll make some more information on that. So we got the articles done that evening. We stayed there until basically the sun went down. I went out there and was taking some pictures of these cars here on the track there again. I like to really make this a thing. I've been pushing that too hard, but I think this is really kind of a fun thing to do when you get to a track. Because people already let people get on the track to sign the start finish line. I think and diecast is so easy to find nowadays. Like you can even find like old stuff like this for like $3 on eBay. If you don't like the new stuff, you can get the old stuff here for like pretty good prices nowadays. So if that's always kind of your thing, like I definitely look in that. Or you could, this is a perfect segue, or you could join the LASTCAR.info Patreon. And if you join the $10 level, I'll give you one. I'll mail one out tomorrow if you join up today. So we have that for our $10 level members. Our $5 level members get a bumper sticker. Our $35 level members get LASTCAR.info t-shirt. It's designed similar to this, but actually it will mention that you're a 2019 sponsor. Very much like our bumper stickers as well. We actually have a design with Roy Allen Jr. on it for this year, since it's car number 19 for 2019. That'll be the theme. Although if you want one of these shirts instead, I could always make that an option too. That's certainly not a problem. We can get that worked out. It's all from the same place. We get it through Redbubble.com, who I think does a pretty good job. I've had this one and thrown this through the wash a few times. They did a pretty good job with it there. So we have that. And of course, we still have copies of the book there for sale. $22 for a copy. I can autograph those and send those out to you. Again, we have a couple in the store there and that whole deal. But yeah, I think I'm surprised the diecast thing hasn't taken off. I'm waiting for somebody else to start doing this themselves and take credit for it, which would be fine. Go ahead and do it. I mean, I'm knocking off, the same thing that Jeff Gluck does with his quiet tractor thing. So everybody's, inspired by something else anyway. But I think this is an even better idea because one thing that's interesting at Sears Point, when you do this, and you'll see it in the pictures that are on the social media, the track is really rough. When you get right down to the surface, the track is really coarse. And I don't know how long it's been since it's been repaved. I don't think it really needs to be. I mean, there's some tar strips in it, just like every place else. But yeah, it's a very rough surface, and that's something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. The road course there, I mean, that'll tear the tires up, quicker than anything. I mean, Watkins Glen's been repaved pretty recently, and that place is just lightning quick. But Sears Point has never been a track that's about being fast. It's about being precise. It's about being technical, and bouncing off those curves and everything as best as you can. But that's the whole deal there. So. Still going full bore on the Patreon and the website and everything. We're getting ready for Chicagoland now this weekend. We got an article tomorrow for the ARCA Series race from Gateway that William Saki covered. Also, we got a big thanks to a gentleman who provided some pictures for that. Let me make sure I attribute the right name here. The ARCA Series, that's still a series I got to check out one of these days. I haven't actually seen an ARCA Series race live, but it seems like that's more my speed because you have a lot of teams that are really underfunded and just doing the very best that they can. Yes, Mike Raphael provided some fantastic pictures during the weekend that I put into William's article and attributed there. So look forward to that. They got some good information I think was able to complement the piece there. And this brings me to the rest of this season, and I do have an announcement that I want to make in this. So you'll see that I'm wearing the Darlington Raceway shirt from back in 2017. There is a reason for that. If you go to my Patreon, you will see that we have now changed our schedule for 2019. We have added another race. So not only are we going to do Mosport in late August, we are going to attach a return to the Darlington Raceway the following week. We are going to go back to Darlington Throwback Weekend. So that is another race that we are going to do this year. I do not know yet in what faculty I will be doing that. We were going to make a bid for media credentials, but it is a very competitive race to get into. I was very fortunate to get credentialed for that last time because I do not have a hard card. I am, a site that is credited, that has been credentialed in the past. We've now done four different tracks, including Williams coverage over in Road America. So we are a media outlet that is covering races, that is doing work, that people want to see. We want to get better at it. We want to do even more of it. But the plan is, because we live in California, because we are out of market of several of the racetracks on the East Coast, the original plan had been to raise funds to do individual trips. I think a more cost-efficient way would be to do a trip that we can link a couple of races together, and then try to work some other connections there to kind of reduce cost as when it comes to hotels and things of that nature, and do that. So that is the plan on that. And the reason being is that we're going to be doing Canada with a friend Robert Taylor up there, and we're already committed to doing that, and we're going to try to work some stuff out with that. We're still working the details out on that. We're doing the Truck Series weekend, so we're going to do coverage up there. We're going to do a little international flair there. We haven't done a race outside of the U.S., so very excited about that. Our article that we did for LASTCAR at Watkins Glen was finished up at Rob's place. So that was the first article we did out of the country, but now we're going to actually do some coverage out of the country. Then our plan is to take the rental car and drive from Bowmanville down to Darlington later that week, and we are going to cover the Southern 500. Even if we're just in the grandstands that weekend, we will still do the very best that we can to get any coverage that we can that weekend. We hope that is not going to be the situation, but we are going to certainly do the very best that we can to actually get that race covered. And then in November, we're still committed. We're still looking to do the same thing. We're going to do a couple races paired together, the Texas race and the Phoenix race, the two of the last three races of the season. We're going to pair those up as well and link those together. I think that will be even more doable ahead there. So if you want to be a part of this program, if you want to be a sponsor and get yourself either a die cast or a shirt or a bumper sticker or anything like that, or even if you just want access to Patreon, we even have just a $1 level on there. So any amount helps at all, because we're still getting that set up. But we have already set up the flights for the trip to both Mosport and Darlington. We are going to now backfill that trip and get that ready. In the meantime, now that Sears Point is wrapped up, our attention is now going to turn to that pair of races there for our next bit of coverage. And we will get some more last place coverage for you. And what form that will take, we will find out. But Throwback Weekend was fantastic for us. And Kerry Tharp and the folks over there at Darlington are just a great group of individuals there. They welcomed us with open arms. And that was a really big weekend for us, because that gave us the opportunity to show that we are perfectly willing and capable to work out of market and to work in other places on the East Coast. And so now we can say that we've worked on both coasts. And that helped us get into Phoenix. And that is what we were looking to do, is just add as many tracks as possible and give you the same coverage that you saw back at Sonoma for as many races as possible in the future. But again, nothing guaranteed about media credentials, nothing about that. We go through the same process as everyone else, but we are going to cover that race. We're going to do the very best that we can to do what we did at Sears Point to make that the very best that we can. So look forward to that at the end of August, at the beginning of September. In the meantime, we're going to be still doing the coverage for the other races here online, starting with Chicagoland this Sunday. That's going to be another one where I'm probably going to be up after about 21 hours. But we're going to do a disqualification show after that one. And then we're going to have a very special weekend for Daytona the following week, where we're going to be back in the gray room at the other LASTCAR headquarters up at the parents' place. And we're going to do that for that weekend. And that's going to be very exciting, I believe, to get some more information on that. So I'm just thinking back to anything else I may have missed. If you have any questions on the Sears Point weekend in general, any questions in general, I'll talk about the Chicagoland picks too. I see that was a question here. Let me just look at my notes to see if I had any other topics I wanted to kind of cover. Let's see. On the videos list here. One thing I have to mention, okay, I'm looking at my notes here. I don't know if I mentioned this a while back. The J.D. McDuffie stone in Watkins Glen that was laid just a few weeks ago. Our friends up in New York, Charlie Birch and his family there, took some pictures up at the track there. We're at the outside Smalley's Garage, the original track in 1948. That stone was laid out there, and so that's very exciting. We want to go back to Watkins Glen one of these days, if only to see that, and then do some coverage back there as well, because that was an exciting race to cover. We're not going to do that this year, but maybe next season we're going to look into that. But right now our attention is turned towards the Most Sport in the Darlington week for our next round right now. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous show as well. Condolences to the family of Damindu Migawati, who is a big supporter of the website here. I know this is a bit of older news here from past weeks ago, but I want to make sure I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him at least one of these shows here. He was one of my most ardent supporters of the website and the starting grid videos in particular in the past there. So condolences to his family out there. I never got a chance to meet him face to face here, but it was definitely a pleasure talking with him online. And this week was very much a kind of a week also that was kind of a theme of that a bit in terms of kind of going back to some of the old school stuff we did on the website. We did the starting grid video for Sears Point this week, which was our first one for Sears Point in quite some time, actually. I think it might have been back in the old BSGN days. Did the first part with the Darrell Waltrip. I want to say a few words about Darrell Waltrip here. Did that basically right in this room here. You find this door here. And did that. That was very, I wanted to make sure I did something for the Waltrip deal there. Again, much like we mentioned earlier, he had a tremendous, he may not have been everybody's, cup of tea either in the wheel or in the booth, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have an absolutely, significant impact in the sport. And I think that was honored very well. And I hope that the grid was a good step towards that. The ESPN grid was very fun to do. It was a little bit of a challenge for sure. But I found a way to actually make it a little bit quicker to put together. It didn't get posted until about midnight the day of the race. We had it available for the patrons for about 4 hours before we left. In the future, I'd love if we do other starting grids. I'd hope to get it up a little bit quicker so that they get advanced access for a bit quicker, or a bit longer rather. But certainly within 12 hours of the start of the race, we had to get that up about as quick as we could. Really appreciate the comments and the support on the YouTube channel there. The big thing also was the other video that we had posted this week, why NASCAR was awesome in the 90s. That was a video that's been rattling around in my mind for a while, much like the J.D. McDuffie book here. I've been meaning to do some commentary where I kind of loosen up a little bit, where it's not quite as strictly formatted as kind of like the historical videos we've done or the historical books that we've done here, kind of more of a commentary thing. I've kind of shied away from commentary most of the time in the website because, I'm not a really big fan of putting together arguments, pointing at this and pointing at that, because I don't feel like my knowledge in the sport is as worthy or is fully contextualized in some cases. There's some things that I feel like I'm capable of confident enough to argue about, but there's other ones that maybe I feel passionate about, but I can't quite point at something. What was great about doing that video is I think there were definitely some very clear things that I wanted to point at and say, like, okay, yeah, this was good and this was good and this was also good. And you don't have to say that this was good and this was bad. You can see why this was good, how different it is from now. I didn't realize how many motor oil commercials there were back then and how they were all competing against each other, or how many commercials use racing footage in there and how few of them do it now. The Ally Bank ones that they do for Jimmy Johnson, they really stand out because it's completely different. And you really see that in all the different medication commercials. It's a whole different experience nowadays, and that's just the commercials versus the broadcasts themselves. So definitely check out those videos there if you haven't already. I appreciate, again, all the comments. We're still getting plenty of comments today on those, and people seem to really enjoy that. So maybe we'll be doing some more commentary videos in the days and weeks ahead. Again, our focus is still with the races coming up later this summer and then into the fall. Let's see. Jeff Green being another big story coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think we'll talk about this more with the Kentucky show. But apparently having rotator cuff surgery coming up later this month. He's going to be out of the car after his home track in Kentucky. So they're wishing him the best as well in advance as he gets that treatment. Hope to see him back in the car as soon as possible. I think one thing that's really cool about this, though, is that this is actually going to be after Daytona. So we may get a good chance to see him have another good run there in the 38 car before he has to get treatment there, and then hopefully see him back in 2020. In the meantime, we certainly do hope that he gets back in as soon as possible. It is going to be an interesting last place story going forward. Although he is not quite the favorite already, it's still been a really competitive last place battle in the Xfinity Series this year. He has not been the fixture that we've seen in the past couple seasons. So there's other competitors that could be the big storyline this season that get featured in the book at the end of this year. LASTCAR books, that is, that we have the ebooks online at Amazon. But that's really the big thing with that. So as to who would be a favorite for last place at Chicagoland, I mean, this is a race where talk about a race where at Sears Point where we almost had everybody even finishing on the lead lap, and never mind finishing. Chicagoland is the race that, if memory serves, was the one that had a whole streak of drivers that just finished under power, where we had nobody falling out of the race. Highly unusual, a very different set of circumstances, but that is let's open that back up. That is something that I would look ahead to this weekend. I think we could have another situation where it's going to be a driver that doesn't complete the race with an actual DNF, but actually gets a finish multiple laps down. Let me see here. Pull this up here. I'm just going to kind of play around with the stats here in the meantime. Pulling up this. F. As the other thing I'm going to be working on today is working on the graphic for our LASTCAR.info graphics, and also get ready for our entry list storylines for this week as we get back to the Chicagoland track. Let's go back here. Yes, yeah. The previous 3 years before last year, we had an oil cooler issue for Timmy Hill in this race last year. But the last 3 years that was run in September between Austin Dillon, Joey Gase, and Ray Black Jr., every single car in the race finished. All of them finished under power. They didn't all finish on the lead lap in any of those cases, especially in Austin Dillon's, where he actually suffered some damage. He got the first last place run for the 3 car since back in 1992, which was a significant one in itself. I think we could have a very similar situation. It could be the Motorsports Business Management team again, like we saw last year with Timmy Hill. I anticipate them probably coming back in this race. I don't know for sure. I do know that they were looking into perhaps coming out here at Sonoma, but of course travel expenses are a big issue. And given the lack of attrition in the race, it's very possible they probably would have been able to get out at the bottom 5, which is unfortunate. But that's just the nature of nature of that race sometimes. Let's see here. So yeah, that's what I would think would happen. I think we're probably going to get a person that finishes last but still finishes the race under power, and that'll be kind of the story going ahead. So just kind of looking there. Oh, I'm seeing your comment there, Brandon. Yeah, if Ernie Irvan drove his old car, yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been cool. I'm not sure if that was something that was on the an idea that was kicked around, but it certainly would have been great, because I know that they had the 4 car out there. They were showing off the fuel cell and everything, and everything. So that was really cool. They had one of Earnhardt's old cars, one of Gordon's old cars. That was goodness me. Allergy medicine will just put me to sleep. Okay, but a lot of great action there. So definitely. So I think that'll probably do it just it for the show here this time. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you really enjoyed the weekend there at the Sonoma Raceway. I certainly did. It was just fantastic. We had so many people that we ran into, and so many opportunities to talk with people there. It turned into kind of mini throwback weekend, really, with Darrell Waltrip stuff, which was kind of cool. A lot of notes that felt very similar to that race there. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to Darrell Waltrip. It would have been neat to do that, but that was probably the one big thing I really wish I could have done there that didn't happen. But pretty much every race that I do these coverages on, it always seems like there's one thing that I look at and it's like, well, it'd been great if we did that, and oh, I should have done this instead of that. But I don't think it was really. He was getting pulled in literally like 16 different directions. Well, no, 17. It's Darrell, but it was a good send off. It's a good send off, and I look forward to seeing the broadcast there to really get the other side of it there. Also looking forward to the documentary they're going to do on Neil Bonnet tomorrow night on Fox Sports 1 during Race Hub. I'm really excited about that. I think it's perhaps done maybe as a response to maybe some of the people criticizing Bonnet being one of the nominees for the NASCAR Hall of Fame in spite of his statistics. And again, the intangibles, I think, are the things that separate somebody that goes to the Hall of Fame and somebody that didn't. The one thing I think is I'm most critical of is, and some people are also criticizing, is when they say, "Oh, well, this driver got in, so we also got to put this driver in." That's kind of, I think, the thing that kind of dulls the effect of that sometimes. So, but other than that, though, I mean, it's again, an interesting weekend, and definitely anxious to see what comes up. And let's see here. That's just about it. So tell you what, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it for right now. We're gonna do a show for the Chicagoland race in this room here, and we're gonna go ahead and get that set up here. But again, thanks DW for all the memories. Thank you to all you fans for following the LASTCAR.info website and the Twitter at LASTCAR on Brock. The Patreon is patreon.com/LASTCAR on Brock. And look forward to additional races this year, starting with, once again, our big news story from this one. We're going to be doing both Most Sport at the end of August, as well as a return in some faculty to Darlington's Throwback Weekend at the beginning of September. And fingers crossed on the credentials. We'll see what happens. I mean, same thing with Most Sport, actually, to that degree. But if, regardless of one way or the other, we're going to make it work. That's what we do here at LASTCAR. We are problem solvers. We will make it work. So we will find that out, and we'll have some more information on that in the days and weeks ahead. So until then, I'll see you next week as we count down the clock for the disqualification for Chicagoland, and look forward to more races that we do in the days and weeks ahead. So thank you again for your support, and I will talk to you then.